All right. Hello, and welcome back to another.
Sorry, I was talking. I'll shut up.
You know what? No, you know what? Let's just cancel the podcast. This is too
Let's go
stressful.
home. I was just gonna give you some words of encouragement right as you jumped into it, because I know the feeling of like God, what do I say now?
Yeah, exactly. Hello, and welcome back to another podcast episode in a series that I'm calling How This Indie Dev. Today, I'm joined by the honorable and most majestic Marnix from Bite Me Games. I've been following you guys on YouTube for a while now. Sorry, there's a bit of a lag there.
Yeah, I think it's also. I think you can just go because we're gonna have this lag the entire time because it feels like we're from across the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I've been following you guys on YouTube for a while, and it's been really fun to see what you guys are doing over there. I'm excited to dive into your processes and overload you with a bunch of questions, but how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I woke up at 4 a.m. to do a live stream. So my day has been talking, but I think this should be fine. Yeah, you're one of my favorite. I don't know if you saw the tier list I think you did. You commented on it. Like, we have a Thomas in our team and you have a Thomas, and like you're my favorite Thomas, even though I have one working with us.
Yes, that's awesome. Yeah, you tagged me in that, and I just cracked up because I thought it was so funny. It was me and your Thomas and Thomas Brush, and that was pure comedy gold. But yeah, you woke up at 4 a.m. for a live stream. Because I saw that come up on my YouTube home feed today, and I'm like, wait, isn't Marnix in Japan? And I checked like Japan time, and I'm like, there's no way he woke up that early to do a live stream. How do you do that?
I set an alarm and I just get used to it. In the beginning, I was like, oh God, I don't want to do this. But now I like generally wake up at like 5 or 6. So it's like, what is that one extra hour? And it's like, it's the optimal audience because all of our audience in the US and in the EU. So if I do a live stream, like even 2 hours later, like the view count just drops. So it's like, well, gotta do it for the views and the viewers. So you get used to it. That's the good news.
Yeah.
But it definitely takes a bit of energy to like 4 a.m. wake up, you take a shower, and then it's like, let's entertain 100 people.
Yeah.
God, it takes some time.
Yeah, totally. That's crazy. And you guys put out a lot of videos. Like I was trying to catch up with some of your more recent videos so that I could prepare some questions that we could go over in this podcast. And I was trying to write down some questions, but your videos kept answering all of my questions. And so I very much appreciate how open you guys are, and like with both your approach and your results, with how you're running your studio. I think that's pretty cool to see. I don't know. It's just been fun to follow you guys and see the videos that you're posting, because you put out a lot of videos on a frequent cadence too.
Yeah, we do 2 videos on YouTube every week. I try to go for 3 live streams, and then we have another Patreon video. So it's like 6 pieces of content in total. And there was a period of time where I even did 3 video uploads a week plus the Patreon. That was too much. It was not worth it. I was just doing YouTube at that point, and I was not doing any game dev anymore. That's like, I think the problem that I often hear, like, oh, this guy, he doesn't make games, he just makes videos talking about games. And it's the one benefit I have of being in a team and not having to do also the programming. You're solo, right? Like, you have to and make the games and make the videos, and it just eats so much time, like the editing and things like that.
Yeah, it's insane. And that's kind of exactly what I wanted to go over today, because I know that you... Well, before I jump into it, for those who don't know, most people probably know who you are, but I do want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and explain a bit about what you guys are doing over at Bite Me Games. So I know you guys you're a game development studio. You've released a couple of games now on Steam. You have like 30,000 something subscribers on YouTube. You're doing like live streams and all this stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'm Marnix. I'm a part of the studio Bite Me Games. We started 2.5 years ago, just like got into game dev as a hobby. Oh, let's make our own game instead of just playing video games all day. And they were like, oh, we have to market our game. How do we do this? I'm like, I'll make a YouTube channel. And it got like 0 views, basically. Our own like devlogs. The games looked horrible. Like, we had no clue what we're doing. But then turned out, hey, people actually didn't care about our game at all, but they cared more about our approach to game dev, basically. Like the things we learned, like some of the first videos that like hit off were like 3 game dev pitfalls. The same content as we kind of make now still, like some of the top 5 things to make your game better and whatever, those videos. Mm-hmm. We also make games, and we cancel games as well. So we made Forge Industry first, which was like an automation game. Then we tried making a road guide. We canceled that. Then we started working back on the strategy game. That one is currently like we're looking for publisher funding to finish that game. And then in the meantime, we're like, oh, let's make a small game. So we made Unicycle Pizza Time, which is like a very ragey style of game of like, hey, you drive the unicycle and you can't fall off. That one blew up with a lot of influencers, mainly in Japan and Korea. So that's been doing pretty okay-ish now for a 1-month dev cycle from like getting the idea to launching on Steam, which was a dumb idea as well. All of these things we do basically, whether we fail or succeed, we make content about it. Because it's even better, honestly, if we fail, because then we get more clicks. So we win regardless.
Yeah, right.
I like to be very open. That's like the main thing. We just like first like 5 seconds when we talk about our financials, it's like, this is the number. And then it's another 15 minutes like talking about it. Is it the best algorithmically? I don't know. But it's the content that I would want to watch myself. So that's basically what I make.
That's
the
awesome.
intro. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I feel like you and I are very philosophically aligned in that we are both very trying to be public and give people a peek behind the curtain and not try and make things pretty or make game dev look easy, but like show people like numbers and like the amount of effort that goes into it and the strategy, and then how, you know, you can do so much planning and still things can go very poorly, you know. And so I think that that's like really good and valuable content to be putting out there. I want to dig into how you guys operate as a game studio, but also like your social media strategy and how you're building an audience, because those two things are like, they're very different enterprises to embark on. And I'm curious to know how you balance those things. But like, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Making the games and then also making content about it, right?
Exactly.
It's like
yeah,
two different things. I think, the first big advantage is we started with 4 devs, like 4 friends we all met in university, and we were like, oh, let's make the game. We first had a few years of corporate experience as like programmers. I used to work at Cisco, which is like one of the biggest like networking companies, and I made data centers, and then got into game dev, which is a big switch. And I always wanted to just make a YouTube channel for fun. And then I guess, how does that differ? I think the big difference is that you may notice YouTube is more profitable than game dev, but like I need to make games to like do the YouTube. Like this is something people often don't understand. You can spend 6 months working on a game or a year or whatever, and will probably earn less than one video with a good sponsor. That's a legitimate risk for like a single sponsor, even for a channel of our size. We're talking about multiple thousands of dollars often. That is like more than the average game revenue on Steam. And it's kind of like the only reason our game studio exists is purely by the YouTube channel, and that being like our modern approach to funding our studio. That's the idea that I have, where I'm almost like, look, other people of the team, Tom, like not you, Thomas, but other Thomas. This is very confusing.
Yeah,
like,
we can just say like
on
good Thomas and bad Thomas if you want.
Yeah, like my F tier Thomas. Like, just focus on making the games, and I'll like try and keep the studio alive through the YouTube content, through our Patreon, all of that basically.
Yeah.
Up until the point basically where now our games are starting to make money as well, and they're getting better, and it like takes a bit of the pressure off.
Yeah.
I think social media strategy, I don't have one strategy, and this has basically been a strategy for the past 2 years. It's just keep making content and don't give up. Like, I knew going in that this was going to take a very long time. And there are like slumps where like our YouTube channel, you've probably had it as well, where like your graph just keeps going down, and there's like everything on the YouTube studio is like grayed out, and there's no dopamine, and like every video is a 7 out of 10. But you just got to keep going. That's like the strategy I have of like, if I keep going at it long enough, it'll probably end up fine. It's just being able to survive long enough. That's for a lot of people, they give up earlier, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And I am jealous that you guys have other people on your team to depend on, because I was thinking about this earlier. You know, the phrase they say, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And I've been thinking about that, and how like as a solo developer myself and trying to make YouTube videos and like juggling all of these different things is a really difficult endeavor for me, because a lot of the stuff that I do, like programming and console porting, like it's not even stuff that I can make a video about really, because it's just boring, you know, and I'm just like in the trenches and like trying to fix really dumb bugs that nobody would really care about. And so I'm jealous that you guys have that team aspect where you can rely on each other to kind of do the heavy lifting and have your specialties. But I'm interested, like because you guys I know a little bit about your studio. There's what, 3 or 4 of you, and you were all friends before you started making games together. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, it can be very tempting to be like, oh, I just get someone else. But we studied together our entire like 3-4 years basically whilst getting our bachelor's. Like, one of the members I've known for like 10 plus years, and at that point you have a trust and you have that friendship as well, where everything like it's gonna be all right at the end of the day. You just stick together.
Hmm.
Everyone has tried, I feel, at some point to team up with someone they met on Discord, and it's like, yeah, let's make a game together, or let's run our YouTube channel and start a studio together. And it always goes wrong at some point because you just don't have as much of that close connection. We got very lucky with having that group, and that's like if you have someone that you can trust that much, where you're not in this with like the thought of a revenue share and oh, you have to commit to 5 years of this. No one on Discord that you've never met wants to do that commitment, basically. It has to be someone you know in real life that you have vibe checked.
Hmm.
It gets hard. And I think even like, yeah, if you want to go fast, you go like solo. Even that for YouTube, like the moment you have to edit a video, it doesn't matter. Like if you're like solo or not, like it takes a lot of time. And I think, yeah, just more people does always help, but it's not always the most realistic as well, I feel.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Give me 1 sec. I need to shut my door here.
Editor, cut that out.
Yeah, editor, cut that out. I replaced my doorknob on my office so that I could lock it, and did a real crappy job at it, and now it doesn't shut all the way unless you kind of lift the door a bit. So
The game dev.
yeah, exactly. I want to talk about your game launches. So
Okay.
you've released 2 games now: Forge Industry, which is like an automation management crafting game, and Unicycle Pizza Time, which is like a 3D platformer physics-based rage game.
Yeah.
So first, I'd really love to hear kind of like your learnings from your first game, Forge Industry. Like, what's the story with how you came up with the idea, and like how did the development cycle go? How did the launch go?
Okay, so how we got the idea, first off, we looked at, okay, what can we do? Technically, before we made Forge Industry, we have to start at the beginning. We wanted to make an open world RPG using the Sinti Fantasy Kingdom. Like, you know the drill at this point. Every indie dev goes through this. And we worked on it for like 3 weeks, and we were like, yeah, no, this is not happening. So then we were like, okay, what are we actually good at? Because we're all programmers at the end of the day. That's what we studied. We had not a grain of art skills in us. And it's like, okay, we're good at writing code. So we focused on what is a mechanically heavy genre. Okay, automation games, because one of the members on our team was like really into Factorio. Someone else was really into Shapes.io. Like, okay, we can make that. We'll make it in a weekend. Like, we'll do a little game jam. Everyone came over to my house and we just like crunched on making like the core of the game. It went miserable. It was the first time like some of us were using Unity. I was suddenly promoted or demoted to 3D modeler. I had never touched Blender in my life. So we came in with like the most bad start you can think. And then we're like, okay, let's keep working on this. So it took us 18 months in total to go from like starting that project to actually releasing it. Through the time we started our YouTube channel as well. Didn't get a lot of traction there. And it was just a miserable experience the entire way. Basically, there was like a period of like 3-4 months where half the team dropped out because they didn't like it anymore. You know, your average indie game dev stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We ended up releasing it, and we made, I think, $1,800 after like 2 weeks after launch. It was not pretty. We wrote 8 reviews or something. But of course, we had to make a YouTube video about it. And then that YouTube video got us like the pity reviews. It got into the discovery queue because we got those pity reviews. And then it kind of made some more money. I think right now we're at about 10K total, a little bit more. But the game objectively, it's not good, I think. It's been a while now since I've touched this. Like an idea I had for like a live stream or something. It's like revisiting my game. Is it as bad as I remember? Is it better than I expected? Like, there are certain parts of the game that I'm like, hey, this is actually pretty nice. Some of them are like, meh. We definitely learned something. It was like the first time we did Next Fest, first time we did influencer coverage, all of that. It was very much our learning experience from there, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that there's something very different. This is what I found as a game developer, is there's a difference between games that are fun to make and games that are fun to play. And it's hard for me to switch the out of developer mode and think like, okay, what do players actually want out of a game too? And so I could see how that, like getting a bunch of programmers together, might fall into that as well.
Yeah, but we had the third problem where it was like the game isn't really fun to play nor to make. Like we were burnt out on that project. The last like 8 months, it was just like just like YouTube. It's like we're so far now. We're just not gonna quit. We're gonna keep going at it. And it was just basically from sheer force of will that we shipped that game. Which is also, yeah, of course, if you don't love the game you're making, it is going to have a negative impact on like the quality of game you're gonna end up with, I think.
Yeah, totally.
That was something that with our sequel game, Unicycle Pizza Time, was the complete opposite. We had that prototype in basically 3 hours, where we threw a multiplayer in, we threw a character controller in, and the game was already fun. And the entire development cycle of like the 1 month, basically, we had fun the entire time. The game was fun. There was a very big difference there. And okay, hey, look, time developed on a game and genre. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter as long as your game is fun and it looks decent. You can do a lot already.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I'm curious. You had this game that sounded like miserable to work on and didn't do very well at launch as you were expecting. And then your next game, you found the fun immediately. Was that a coincidence? Was it kind of a shot in the dark, or was it an intentional like that you found from releasing your first game that you kind of, were there anything that you learned that contributed to you being able to have like a more successful second game?
No, well, technically second game, it's a second release game, but we did 2 more attempts or even 3 games that we like tried to do in between Forge Industry and then Unicycle Pizza Time. The first game, Songs of Everjade, we didn't have that fun initially. We tried adding more art to it. It still wasn't fun. We ended up canceling it like 3 months in once the wish lists weren't good. We learned a lot about 2D games and basically how we are not meant for it. Then Guild Architect is very mechanical. The thing I've learned now about mechanical games is they require a lot of moving pieces to all fit together before they get fun. It's like you have all these different like in-depth mechanics, but until they fit together, generally it's hard to make them fun. And we're like, okay, look, we're not gonna make something too mechanically heavy. And I had gone to a few like event calls. It's something that I think we're one of the only YouTubers who do that, like go to events like Develop Brighton and Gamescom and things like that, DevCon. And everyone I noticed from like the games industry was talking about making those very short they literally called it streamer bait games, like short dev cycle. It's very wonky and you basically target it at influencers. And then also it was Chain Together just came out and I was like, Chain Together, I can make this myself probably. And we're like, okay, let's just do it then. We'll give ourselves 1 month. And we just looked at like the game idea. It started with us looking up like top 10 weirdest sports and like a 10 article listicle. And one of them was just unicycle racing. We're like, okay, we're going to make something with unicycles. And then from there, we just threw it in Unity and then works from there basically. We had a few other ideas that we ended up actually skipping because the scope for a 1 month game has to be tiny. But that's where, okay, we had that fun immediately. And I think now I do see the potential in, okay, whatever game we make, it has to look fun from like, we give it a week of development time tops. If it doesn't look interesting or fun by then, it's probably not going to be it for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys run this experiment to start and release a Steam game in like a 30-day window, which is pretty ambitious.
Yeah, and it includes the marketing. So we had a full 3 days between like having a build ready and having the game ship out basically. So we launched with like 500 wishlists. We got lucky at the end of the day as well with like influencer coverage, definitely to a certain degree. But there I have that approach of, hey, you can make luck by just the more times that you like throw a dice, like the bigger the chance that you're gonna like hit a good number eventually. Whereas if you put everything on one launch, well, you might get unlucky. We got very lucky because we ended up on new and trending and still don't know why. I sent like a message to Chris Zukowski and he was like, I don't know. I'd be happy.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's cool. So I'm trying to figure out, I have a lot of questions. So I guess, so this first game that you guys make, Forge Industry, I'm trying to think about game design in terms of like the Venn diagram that I'm sure you've seen where it's like games that I can make and games that I want to make and then games that make money. And like trying, the sweet spot is right in the middle, but it's hard to get. Like usually you get like 2 of them, not all 3. Sounds like your first game you started with, your only concern was like games that I want to make. And then you realized, oh wait, we can't make this. And then with this time, with Unicycle Pizza Time, it sounded like you are much more intentional about what has the ability to become viral, and you had like an extra attention to detail for influencers. What'd you call it? Streamer bait? Like, I think that's a
Streamer
really
bait,
interesting
yeah.
term. Yeah. Yeah. So like, how do you put yourself in your, like, where would you put yourself in that Venn diagram of trying to figure out the sweet spot for games? And is it something, I don't, I just have a lot of questions, but when you look back on Unicycle Pizza Time, is it like, it was an experiment, right? And
Yeah.
like for a month, like, would you do it again?
We're kind of doing it again, but this time we're giving ourselves like 2 months, basically. Because like 1 month dev cycle, but we need more time to market. That was the big problem here. We just didn't have any time to market. If we didn't want to push it, because also we were moving to Japan, and we were like, we want to enjoy Japan for a few months. We don't want to like release in Japan and then make bug fixes the first 2 days that we're here. So we're like,
Yeah.
hell or high water, we're releasing August 31st. I think to a certain degree, it definitely didn't start as a game that like we want to make of like pure game design passion, if I can like put on my evil like game suit for a second. But it was just looking at, okay, what does the market need? Because we needed a W in terms of like making money, basically. So we're like, okay, if it's not our dream game, but it's still something that we can live by and it's fun, then we'll just do that instead. The games that make money, I forgot what the three was. The games I can make, the games I want to make, and the games that make money, right? That were the three.
Yep. Yep.
It was definitely something that we could make. We wanted to make it. It was like not like, oh, this is my dream game. It was a game that, hey, we'd see ourselves make it. And there was a demand for it. We've seen that with that we were basically just riding on the tail end of Chain Together having come out, and it was like right at its peak. It's calmed down by now, but we were able, because we had such a short dev cycle, to still stay in that like general idea of the rage games, basically. Now for our next games, we're looking a bit more at, okay, games that I want to make as well, but then also look at, okay, what are some of the genres that make more money? Because when you look, you set the Venn diagram for Forge Industry, games that I want to make, games that I can make, and games that make money. We actually had like the intersection of all three of those as well, because we didn't know this, but automation games are like one of the highest earning genres. That's probably the reason why we still ended up making $10,000 for that. If we made a 2D platformer, I would have been happy with $10. It was just the execution that wasn't there, and like the graphics. That was the bigger problem. I think still as a team of coders, we could have made that game great. It's just that was our first game. It's something that we have in like our roadmap. At some point, we want to make like a sequel with like the experience we have now, and like Forge Industry 2 or whatever. Because I think we do have that Venn diagram overlap. We just didn't have the execution to actually hit that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting that you launched Unicycle Pizza Time with 500 wish lists. Like, what happened that allowed you? Because the rule of thumb is like 7 to 10,000 is what they want to say, and you hit new and trending with 500 wish lists at launch. Like, what happened to allow your game to not be dead in the water when it launched?
So I think it was the new and trending. It looks on a variety of things. So one caveat is it was the new and trending for Japan and Belgium. Those were the two countries that we got on. We didn't show up on the new and trending for like global Steam or like worldwide, but we definitely did in Japan. We were the number one game there. And I think it just looked at like conversion rate almost of like how many people woke up and decided to buy the game the moment they got that email of, hey, this game is out. And then from there, we had, once again, we didn't plan for this, but because we launched our game on a Friday, we had the entire weekend where we were on the top of new and trending because no new games were coming out. We had a few influencers cover us on launch day as well, but we only had one influencer cover us like 2 days before launch, basically, because that's when our build was out. Our own audience, I think, maybe helped a lot as well, but because that's like, maybe you get this as well, where it's like, oh, the only reason your game is successful is because you have the YouTube audience. It's something that we hear a lot. But I can now like point to like the sales data and be like, objectively, like our YouTube audience from Japan is like less than 1%, and our sales audience is like 69%. It's like, that's not an overlap. But we did a live stream where it's like, hey, the game is out. Go everyone, like give us the 10 reviews. So we did immediately have those 10 reviews. That was an important one. But that's something that everyone can do. If you're watching this right now, like indie dev who doesn't have a YouTube audience, all you need is like 10 people. Worst case, you go up to someone, you give them the money that your game costs, and be like, buy this game and review it. It's going to be so worth it. If you don't have those 10 reviews, you're not going to end up anywhere. Get those as fast as possible. And then from there, yeah, I don't know. The Steam algorithm is a big black giant box. Like I told you, like I sent the screenshot to Chris Sikowski. It was like, it's a beautiful one. I can maybe send it to you later. It's like outstanding wish lists was like 500, and then like copies sold was 600 or something at the same time. It's like, this doesn't make sense.
So there was an emphasis on. Go ahead.
No, I don't think I had anything to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's super interesting that you had such a high concentration in Japan. Hearing you say that made me think about something that Pirate Software said with his game. I think he similarly has a very large majority of his game sales in like Brazil or something. And he actually went in and manually changed like the price for the Steam sales in Brazil because the auto conversion was way too high for that country. Is that something that you did for different countries, or like or was it specifically like influencer outreach? I'm interested, like do you have like something that you can point to that you're like, oh, this is probably why Japan has like such a big concentration?
We definitely did that Pirate Software thing as well. So Steam's auto-suggested pricing indeed is horrible. What we did was we basically copy chain together, because that was a game that sold. So we copied their pricing with the same pricing structure. And then I did manually change the one for Japan because I've been spending multiple months here. So I have a bit of a better idea of like, how's the local economy? And it's like not doing too hot compared to like the USD. So I manually changed the price to 499 yen. And like the largest denomination in Japan, if you go for coins, is 500 yen. And what a lot of streamers even told them like on stream was like, oh yeah, the game is just one coin. Because they talk about the 500 yen, which converts to about $3.50 versus the $5 in the United States. Mm-hmm. But I think, yeah, having it very much impulse buy territory has helped a lot. For some other countries, we looked at pricing, but I don't think we did anything drastic there. I know Indonesia, I think we priced at 420.69 or 16 or like 69,420. But that's about it. I don't think there was like, it's one of our top countries, but I don't think that was the reason. It was like, I think Steam suggested like 70,000. I was like, let's do the funny number instead.
Yeah, totally. That's funny. So that's interesting. So did you do a lot of influencer outreach for your launches? Because like both of them, because I've launched 2 games on Steam now, and Steam and my console launches, I don't think I saw like a big impact for sending out free keys and trying to get like influencer attention either on Steam or consoles. There's some people that covered it, but it wasn't like, definitely with sales data, I didn't see like any spikes. So were you like sending out a lot of keys to influencers like specifically in Japan, or how did you go about that?
We didn't start really with Japan specifically. I think I sent to like 5 or 7 because it's actually relatively hard to contact Japanese influencers because a lot of them, if you look at the VTubers, they're behind agencies, and the agencies, they'll block you. I mean, you have similar problems with like US-based and like Western-based influencers. The moment they're over 100K subscribers, they're behind an agency most of the time. It's very hard to reach out to them. We got lucky with one VTuber that was like independent, so there was no agency. We could just contact them, and she was relatively big. That was the one. And then I think from there, it picks off. It's like, I'm very much a firm believer of the only thing almost that you need to market your game is influencers. Because I kind of see, like, I'm an influencer myself. At the end of the day, you look a lot at what is everyone else doing. And if someone is like doing something new and shiny, well, a lot of the smaller influencers will look at that as well and be like, hey, I want to do that. Yeah. Once we had that first influencer in Japan, like, that played the game, we're like, okay, let's try a bit more. And I think I sent like 10 more to the ones that I could find. And from there on, people actually, like, some of the agencies contacted us. First, it was some smaller agencies with like 25 to 50K subscribers in their portfolio. But then I think like 3-4 days ago, HoloLive reached out and they were like, hey, we want to like get permission because Japan is very strict on that stuff. Like, you can't normally monetize a game unless you give explicit permission as a developer. Like, yeah, you can play my game and make money from it at the same time. It's pretty wild how it works here, but everyone gets sued. It's very rough here if you do get sued. We see that with Palworld as well. So they reached out now. I reached out to about 100 influencers in total. But for example, Korea was one that I did not touch at all. And then Korea, we didn't have any sales really the first 2 weeks. And then some Korean influencer picked it up organically. And now it's 13% of our audience is from Korea. Because once again, as long as one person picks it up, it keeps going down. And we never had that like big coverage from a Western, so like a Moist Critical or a Northern Lion or whatever. They never ended up covering the game. Like the US market is like, I think 4% or something, not even of our total audience at this point. where
Interesting.
I have the hopium now of like one day, Most Critical picks up our game in like one of his live streams, and it starts a new wave of like the US space, because there is a very clear conversion of this influencer is streaming my game, sales graph go up of just people are like, hey, I can be better than him. Let me buy the game myself and try it out.
That's so interesting. So when you were developing the game, did you intentionally try and make it like extremely difficult? Like, because usually game developers are trying to like what do they call it? Balance the game so that it's not too difficult for a lot of people. But is this like is this a game where you were trying to make it difficult, or is it? I haven't played it yet, but is it like I know.
Exposed.
I know. I actually had it on my to-do list. I'm like, I should buy that Unicycle Pizza Time and play it, but then time got away from me. So I'll play it after this. Is it? Did you have an
It's
emphasis
the opposite.
on? Yeah, you tried to make it easier.
I felt like the game was going to be too easy, basically. Because the thing is also, if you're the level designer, it's like, yeah, I've played this game. I mean, I only had a month time, but I played it basically for like 3-4 days nonstop. And I'm like, yeah, I can do this blindfold in like 4 minutes or something. It's like, yeah, if I can do it in 4 minutes, it's going to be too easy, right? But then we launched the game, and the feedback we got was like, oh, it's way too hard. And we saw that as well when we joined like the live streams. And there was this one crazy Japanese dude. He live streamed the game for 17 hours nonstop. He was like, no checkpoints. I will keep playing this game until it like is finished. Because I saw it in like the evening. I was like, hey, how's it going? And then like I wake up the next morning. He's still live. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Please stop playing the game. So it took 17 hours. We ended up adding checkpoints like 2 days after release or something, because we were like, yeah, too many people are struggling here. There was like a very punishing part. Like if you go past the first part, it's all right. But then there's like a water section, and if you touch the water with your unicycle, you die, and you have to like start all over. And that was a bit too infuriating for too many people. So we're like, okay, we'll add checkpoints, and if you use checkpoints, you don't get added to like the global leaderboard, and that's it. That has helped a lot. Like a lot of the VTubers were like, thank you for adding VTuber mode so we can actually like finish the game. And then what you would see is, hey, they play the game with checkpoints first, then maybe they do it another time with checkpoints, and then they're like, okay, now we want to go for the leaderboard score. So it has helped a lot to make the game a little bit easier. Should we have added checkpoints from the beginning? Probably it was something we considered, but it was like, yeah, we have 1 month dev cycle. Even if it takes like 2 hours to implement this, still like we have too little time before launch.
Interesting. Okay, so going through your experience of the games that you've launched, do you think it's possible for individuals or small teams to sustain themselves off of game sales without having like a big hit game? Because it seems like the top 1% of Steam are the games that kind of get all the attention. But I'm wondering, like, what is your studio's approach going to be moving forward? Like you said, your next game, you're going to do like 2 months of development time. Are you going to continue to concentrate on these very small scoped games?
I think at the end of the day, it's like, if it's working, it would be kind of dumb to stop doing what's working, I feel, especially when you are like us, like very much bootstrapped, and it's like every month is like make or break almost for us. Like we have that runway, and that runway is getting shorter every month. And it's like, yeah, if this is going to be what works for us right now, yeah, it's better than spending another 18 months on a long scale development game. So for now, we're going to probably stick to it. It's something that you also, I think it's not as easy as people think, but on the other hand, because it needs that upfront investment of, you're going to need multiple games to have that passive income dream of, yeah, I'm making $100 a day just off like residuals from my game sales. Right now, I think Unicycle Pizza Time is at about $60 a day, like gross. So let's say we earn $30 a day from it. It's nothing crazy, but at the end of the day, that's still $900 a month. If you can stack that a few times, and then you have the sales and things like that, which gives spikes as well, it can help. But getting to those first like 5 games or whatever, that takes time as well, because if these are your first games, you can't make it in a month. We had 3 people or 2 people working on it, a lot of Unity experience. We knew at this point what we were doing, how to do the game design, a little bit at least. We weren't like brand new. Then it works. Everyone points at the like GDC talk from, I think, Tim Burkett of like 7 years without a hit.
Yeah.
It can definitely work, but it's that initial velocity that you need of like having that backlog, basically. That's the hard part. Another one people point to often is like Sockpop, who have like the Patreon. They make like 8K a month on Patreon, where they make games, and they like every month they release a game on Steam as well. But it's hard to do. It's not easy. Nothing in game dev is easy is the thing that I've basically learned. I'm like, why am I here?
Yeah.
But I think it is a very valid approach at the end of the day. Are there better approaches? Maybe something like YouTube could still be more worth it if that's something you like to do. I don't think there's a foolproof meta of like, what are the games you have to make? Should you get publishing like funding? Should you make small games? Should you become a YouTuber? Should you sell courses? There's so many approaches. And depending on who you are as a developer, like there's going to be a good choice for you. And maybe you don't want to do the small games. And there's other ways you can do it then as well, like early access games, doing things like Kickstarters. Just so many ways you can do it, basically.
Yeah, totally. So that's a really good transition to what I want to talk about next, which is like social media and building in public and like accruing an audience and all of that, because I'm interested to hear like all of the stuff that you guys are doing apart from game development right now. So at Bite Me Games, you guys are uploading a lot of YouTube videos, you're doing tutorials and developer coaching and Patreon videos of like your expenses. And I don't know if I missed, if there's other stuff that you're doing, but that's like a lot of stuff to juggle.
Wait, what else? We do a lot. At least you have like the affiliate stuff as well, where like, oh, if you buy a Unity asset and whatever. We do juggle a lot. Sometimes a bit too much. I think it's very much, if you want to do YouTube, a young man's game where I just work. I wake up at 4 a.m. to do the live streams because it's part of the job. I forgot what the original question was. Where did we get off from?
Yeah,
what do we do apart from making games, right?
Yep.
And how do we see that? Yeah, it depends on... I started the YouTube just because I like doing it. If you dig deep enough on YouTube, you'll find like 15-year-old me doing Battlefield 4 gun reviews and things like that. Like, I liked the YouTube stuff to begin with. I did this purely for the love of the game to begin with. And then the monetization came later on. It took us a long time. We had a very rough launch of starting our YouTube channel. I think it took 15 months to get the first 1,000 subscribers, which is not really great in terms of like the average time. Like normally it's like 9 to 12 months is like the average. I think what did help is we had more of the business mindset versus just the devlogger mindset of, hey, YouTube is going to be a source of revenue for us as well, on top of just wish lists, because it doesn't give wish lists basically. And that's why we did things like those Patreons and things like that. But it takes time to do that as well. Patreon is something that I think you should only do if you have like 10K plus subscribers. And a lot of people may never even reach the 10K plus. Same with like sponsor deals. If you're under 10 or like 5K, it gets rough to do those as well. So it takes a lot of time to get those things rolling.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I just hit 10,000 subscribers like a month or two ago, and I'm just now looking into doing more like sponsorship opportunities and like ramping up my involvement with my Patreon and all of that. But because it's a lot, but I'm interested, like, how do you figure out how to spend your time? Because I feel like I spread myself pretty thin in a very similar way of juggling a bunch of different projects and ways to interact and grow like this community while making multiple games simultaneously. And like the question that I struggle with most is, how do I figure out how to best allocate my time? Because it seems like there's an infinite amount of things that I could and should be doing. So how do you figure out how to divide up your time with all of this stuff?
It's like with scope creep, you just have to say no to certain things, is I think the first thing. So my core tenet is, no matter what happens, there will always be 2 videos on YouTube. I don't care what happens, like there will always be 2 videos. And all of the time I have left on that, I can work through my giant to-do list, basically. But I will not work on my games or whatever if there's not those 2 videos a week. That is like the core tenet. I think we've been doing that consistently for over 1.5 years at this point.
Wow.
Because that is the thing, that's like our main money maker still at the end of the day. It's my face on camera talking about things we like did wrong with our games or whatever. And from there on, I have my developers who are like fighting, like, hey, Marnix, I need art, I need this, I need that. And it's like, okay, once those videos are done, I can get to you. But nothing comes between those videos. That's like the one like thing that I am unwavering on. And then it's like certain things I'm also like, we're not going to do this. I think a big one that like we often get the question from our audience, like, oh, when is the Bite Me merch drop and whatever? And it's like, it's cool. And it's like a YouTuber thing, but it's not the focus right now. So I think I definitely still work with a mindset of YouTube first, for me personally at least, because I think my job is mainly YouTuber, less game dev. That's not the studio, that's me within the studio. And then from there, I have like my priority list basically of other things to work on. So it's YouTube, it's games, and if I'm somehow like ahead of my like the developers, then I can see, oh, what else do I want to do? I want to try out something like special. One thing we're planning on doing is like, I want to host an award show this year where like our viewers can submit the games they make and we'll do like a little award show. And it's like, yes, it's content, but it's not the core of our. It's like definitely scope creep for our YouTube channel, basically. But it's like I'm in a point right now where I have a little bit of time to dedicate to that. But some things I'm also like, yeah, this is not the focus right now. Like sponsor deals take a lot of time. Right now with Unicycle Pizza Time, I don't have to work with sponsors. We have a little bit of like leeway from that, so I can drop that and focus more on the games again. But it changes very wildly, like the amount of hours I work one week to another. Like if I have a time track to like what I do, it can change completely. Like there can be a week where I barely touch the game, and then there's a week where I only touch the game almost. If I have the YouTube backlog, like I schedule my videos 2 weeks in advance. I think, yeah, that's the one thing that I would suggest is just scheduling as far in advance as you can. Like I know what videos I'll make for the next month. I haven't recorded all of them, but I know at least. That alleviates a lot of stress for me. And then, okay, once I know that, I can record it like 2, 3, 4 videos at once. And then that's a week of content. Those are my main things, like batching things, like all of the productivity stuff, basically. My hobby is watching productivity YouTube and business YouTube, which is not what most game devs do, but I think those things have helped me as well to see what should I focus on.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm just right now at a point where I am ahead of my YouTube upload schedule for the first time ever. Like I've been uploading videos for like close to 3 years or something, and I'm at 11,000 subscribers, and it's been like, you know, I try and put together a YouTube video, publish it as soon as I can, then I'm off to working on my games, and then I come back and do another YouTube video, you know, like the next month or sometimes a couple months, you know, but now I'm doing a thing for the month of October where I'm trying to get out 2 videos a week, which is like taking a lot of time, but same as you were saying, I've started to batch my recording so that I have like an idea of what I'm doing. And then like calls like this are really fun too, because I can schedule out podcasts with talking to people, and then I can say like, okay, like the Bite Me Games interview is going to go live like next Friday, you know, and then I have like that calendar to work off of, which is very, very helpful. But one thing that I've noticed watching your guys' videos is that I feel like you and I have very similar philosophies, where I like being able to build in public and also fail fast. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I'm trying to think of like the videos that I would want to watch on YouTube like 5 years ago. And so that's kind of the motivation that I use, is like I want to picture the demographic of where I was at, you know, like half a decade ago. But I'm interested, what's your motivation for the type of videos that you make? And like, because you guys are very open with all of your numbers and expenses and earnings and failings and all of that stuff, which I think is super commendable and very valuable for people to watch. But what motivated you to build content like that?
My general philosophy of content has been like, I make content for me 6 months ago. That was how I started, at least. It's like, okay, Marnik 6 months ago, what did he have to know, basically? So not like 6 years, but 6 months in my case. The build in public, I'm actually, at least for game dev stuff, I'm getting a bit back of that, because the second game we wanted to make, this Own Server Jade, we're like, okay, devlog 0 will show you absolutely everything. I think it's bad. I think showing actual game devs the way game dev works, it's just miserable for you as the creator. That's like why we still haven't released a devlog for Guild Architect, even though we've been working on it for like 7 months at this point. Because if you make something that is not to a like S-tier visual standard, because YouTube is a visual medium, it doesn't matter how great your mechanics are, your audience will tear it up. They will just give you crap on it. And some of it is like, yeah, they're trying to be helpful, but most of it is just people being mean. Part of the YouTube, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So we're taking a step back a bit of the build in public until it looks presentable. There's definitely movie magic and things like that going on in our devlogs, where I know now that actually building in public and showing every single raw detail, most of your average YouTube audience does not care about that, and it's actually going to reflect badly on you. The true like build in public, if you really want to see like the crappy stuff, that's for our Patreon, because those are like the diehard fans, and they will not just leave an onslaught of mean comments and things like, oh, guys should just give up and whatever. So I do see the build in public thing it's like, as long as your game looks pretty already, you can build in public. But as long as whatever you're doing is not pretty, I wouldn't do it. You don't have that problem, I think, because the games that you make, they look visually great. I watched the boat video, for example, and it's like, yeah, this is already to an acceptable visual standard, but that's often not how most games start. Like, most games start like gray boxed. Most of our audience are programmers. And even though we show the realistic way, most of our audience is still like room temperature IQ sometimes is how I call it. And it's like, yeah, there's no win for me. There's no win for you. It just gives negativity. I'll just keep working on my game until it looks better, and then I'll show it.
Yeah.
Is the thing I've learned there. I'm definitely all for building in public and the numbers and things like that. But that one, like game dev in public, doesn't make sense if you don't make it more pretty, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's something that I found early on as well. And it has given me, it changes how I develop my games, because like even that ship chess deck builder prototype that I made in just a couple of days, like I knew that I wanted to talk about it on my YouTube channel, and therefore I had to at least hit like a very basic, like just so that you wouldn't be bored looking at the screen, right? It doesn't have to be like gorgeous, but it has to have something there. Like if it's boats on water, there actually has to be boats that are on water. You know, it can't just be gray on gray on gray. And so that changes like how I do everything now. Usually I start with visuals at a very basic level, and then I do functionality after that, which I think is probably a distinctly YouTuber kind of way to develop games.
Yeah, but I have a hot take there. I think it's actually the right way to develop games. Is like how I have shifted now. We saw this with the Unicycle Pizza Time. The game is an asset flip at the end of the day. We just used like Unity, like asset store, all like PBR textures and everything, just make it look pretty from the start. Mm-hmm. Because that is also how your average Steam user is not a game developer who appreciates the art of complex, intricate games. I know they look at a game for like 5 seconds in their discovery queue or in their like Steam, like Next Fest or whatever. If it doesn't look good, they'll click away. And it doesn't matter that you write a book in your long description of like all of these in-depth mechanics. You'll lose a lot of people already if the game just doesn't look good. And it's like so often, like people send me like demos and it's like a game, yeah, I worked 2 years on it. And it's like, yeah, the mechanics are there, but the game just doesn't look good. And it's like, I'm sorry, but this is probably not going to be selling as well as if you had started with making the game look good first and then focus on adding the mechanics. That's one of those things that we're doing now with our 2 next games, where I was like, okay, we just take an empty Unity scene and we don't write a single mechanic until we can make that look pretty. And we build from there, basically, where marketing starts with how the game looks and like the genre, basically. And that's what we're thinking about more now as well.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. That paradigm shift of like what game developers are looking for and what game players are looking for is super important, especially because everybody that I interact with on YouTube and Twitter, they almost all are game developers. So I'm interested, how do you find yourself to like appeal to different types of audiences? Because you make games, you make YouTube, you do coaching and other stuff. Like, do you treat these audiences with the same priority? Or like, it's got to be hard to think, okay, I need to make a game for normal people and specifically influencers, and my YouTube videos should appeal to game developers, and my Patreon content should appeal to like entrepreneurs or something like that. Like, how do you think through that?
I think we have 2 main like audiences, like the games and everything that's not a game are the 2 separate audiences. The games, I definitely have the idea of average Joe looks at my game on Steam and he wants to play this game. And I almost forget I have the YouTube audience when coming up with the game ideas in the game development. I really look at it of, okay, I am Timothy and I only play Call of Duty and Warzone most of the time, and now suddenly Steam puts this random game on my feed. Like, am I gonna be interested in this? And then for the YouTube side and all of that, I understand, look, most of my YouTube viewers, there's of course some overlap. Some people will buy our game out of support or because they generally think it's interesting. But I don't really treat it as that. We talk more about the things we learn from our games than the actual games on our YouTube channel. Like, I can pull off like, hey, this is something we learned from Unicycle Pizza Time, but I often don't even bother being like, by the way, you can wishlist it and buy it and all of that and follow our Steam page and whatever, because I've learned at this point that our audience doesn't really care about that. And at that point, there's only so many call to actions you can do in a video before your like audience gets tired of it. And then it's like, I could do a call to action to go and like wishlist my game, which most people weren't interested in, or I can do a call to action of like, hey, there's a link down below to book a call with me, which will earn me like much more probably. And if I can only do one call to action, I would rather do that one. It's like, okay, yeah, game devs are very like scared of the business side of running a YouTube channel. It's like, oh my God, how dare you charge money for anything? And it's like, yeah. If I don't, I wouldn't be here anymore. I love the video that you made of like, yeah, I'm not making enough money. That's like the blunt transparency that I would love as well. Of like, yeah, guys, at some point, we do have to make money. We're in this full time. The only way that you can get all of this content is by me being full time. If I had another 40-hour job, it wouldn't happen. And something has to give at that point. And most of your audience, they won't convert, and that's fine. But there will always be some people in that audience. I don't have like a separate demographic of like, oh, chunk conversion and like the entrepreneurial game devs. I treat them all the same, and I just accept that, hey, 0.1% of them will convert or something like that. I think it's a bit more, 0.4% convert. And I just approach it with that. And I've learned there as well that it's not just purely on views. Like before I was like, oh yeah, I do a video like top 10 tips for beginning game devs. It always gets the most views if you want. Like, oh yeah, getting started with game dev in 2024. And you can do a call to action there of like, yeah, you can get my coaching or whatever, or you can go to our Patreon. But the people there, they don't really match the people you would have on Patreon, for example, because they're barely getting started with an engine. They don't care about the financials of running a studio. Whereas if we make a video of like, hey, I've gone to an event like Develop Brighton or DevCon, which is very niche already. Those videos perform horribly on our channel. Like they're 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. They don't get that many views. But it's just me sitting in like a sun chair, wearing sunglasses and talking about like, yeah, these are like the industry trends that I'm learning about on this conference. And suddenly that video, even though it got like 1% of the views, converts to 10 patrons. And that's when it like clicked in me of like, yeah, views don't matter at the end of the day. It's the match between the audience, the content that you make, that is more important. Like if you can get 100,000 views about like our devlog game, and it's either on a YouTube channel that is focused on, let's say, resource automation games. That's what we did with Forge Industry. Versus we get the same amount of views with our audience, the conversion rate is just so different. So it's better to focus on what is the platform that our games perform well on, our own YouTube channel in that case, versus what is something that would do well with our YouTube audience, and make content tailored to those two.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I feel like it was kind of an aha moment for me when I hit 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, because before that, I always had this mindset of like, okay, I need to make a video that will get me more subscribers. And that was kind of like my whole approach to like, you know, I want to make videos that I want to make, and I want to cover the stuff that I'm working on, but it has to be like through the lens of like, how do I get more subscribers? And now I'm at the point where I'm realizing I have a community that even if I don't grow, like they deserve videos that they enjoy, you know? And it's like cultivating the existing people who are following me instead of just trying to grow and find new people, you know? Like I feel like I'm much more content because I'm at the size of my channel where I just appreciate having that many people follow me, and I can have like engaging conversations and feedback with people. And like, it's more, I feel like I'm less driven to try and find those like growth videos,
big boost videos.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so I feel like it's probably a mix of both.
You get a lot of like an audience then as well that like doesn't actually care about you that much, I guess. It's something also that I have been like having a bit of an internal discussion with my Thomas with, where he's like, yeah, we should make more tutorial videos, because we had like this one tutorial video, it bombed on launch, but it got like more than 20,000 views over the year. And he's like, yeah, these are the silent sleeper evergreen hits. And I'm like, yeah, they'll get views, sure, but it's not our audience, because someone who's like just looking for solving a specific Unity problem doesn't have like a good overlap with like the rest of our content often. So I would rather not make that kind of content, or like very limited, and just focus on what does our current audience actually want. Yeah. And I think, yeah, that is also like the mindset shift, where sometimes you make content that you're like, I don't know if I want to make this, but it's like, yeah, I should make this still. And sometimes you make videos, like I think you've done it as well, where you tell people go and touch grass, and then 500 people watch it. And normally it's like 5,000. And it's like, but this is the content I want to make. Why don't you guys watch this?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of frustrating. Like, so this is a big question that I have that I'm interested to get your take on, both for you and for people watching. But in your opinion, is YouTube worth it? Because YouTube takes so much time, and it's kind of disgusting how much time I've put in to my channel the past couple of years. But if your goal is to like sell games, it seems a lot easier to use other people's audiences. Just send off some emails with the free Steam key, and hopefully if your game is good enough, let the influencers do the marketing instead of you marketing on your own YouTube channel. So do you think for game developers, is it a worthwhile value proposition for devs to have their own YouTube channels?
For a marketing aspect, not at all. If you just want to sell your own games, like you said, other influencers are always going to be better at it. It's going to cost you so much time. It's going to it takes a lot of time and effort to get a YouTube. And once again, you have that game dev audience often then, which doesn't even convert well to a game audience. Like, I think in my experience from like watching devlogs and like looking at the numbers and our own numbers and some other YouTube devs, you can expect about a 0.8-ish% conversion rate between view to wishlist. And then those wishlists also convert below average. Like the average on Steam is like 10-15% wishlist conversion. For wishlist gained from YouTube video, like devlogs, it's 3-5%. It's horrible at the end of the day, the conversion rate. That is not worth it. I think though, on the other hand, YouTube as a like branding thing, if you look at it, you start for the love of the game and you look at it as a long-term thing, is extremely valuable in like the current economy of like the creator economy and all of that. And I think it's almost something that you're doing better than us, Thomas, is you have it branded, not like Thomas does game dev. You're just Thomas Stewart. And you're building up that audience that likes you. And sure, they'll like the games as well. But if I now tomorrow start making gym videos or whatever, I'll probably know how to have an audience because I've done it before. There will probably be some carryover, but our YouTube channel is called Bite Me Games. So we're stuck to that game dev stuff for the most part. You have a bit more freedom, and I think that is like the long-term vision, like 5 years from now, has more potential than just looking at it purely now of, hey, I want to grow my YouTube channel to sell my game or copies of that, basically.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Like I put a lot of thought into what I wanted my online presence to look like off the bat. Like when I first made my Twitter account and like my YouTube channel, and I was trying to figure out how do I brand it, and I realized the people that I like to follow and like consume their content are individuals, because I feel like there's more of like a authenticity or sincerity for people who are just being themselves online, as opposed to like having a brand behind it. So I mean, it's harder for what you guys are doing because you're a team. It's easier for an individual to do that, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's another thing is also a lot of people are like, oh, I want to start my YouTube channel, but I don't want to show my face. And it's like, oh, is this going to impact me? And I think the answer to that is just yes. People can't connect as well if they don't see your face. It's also editing-wise. I'm like moving my hands and whatever. I don't need to add permanent B-roll. It just edits faster. And once again, you get recognized. Like having that face is more memorable. And also, it's just cool. I don't know if you've ever gone to a game dev meetup yet where someone recognized you. It's awesome. It's an awesome feeling. It's like, it's just cool to have that kind of stuff. You'll get there eventually. And those are things that are only possible by showing your face. And then once again, it's more of a personal branding thing than a studio branding thing. Like a lot of people make a studio YouTube channel. I think you're better off being just like, hey, my name is Brent and I make video games and this is me talking about it. And then a few years down the line, you can be like, yeah, I'm kind of moving into something else, because YouTube also goes in cycles. Like, I think it's like you have to reinvent yourself every 2-ish years or something. There's like some stat about it where there's like waves too, and you can have like, oh, now you're very hot and all your videos do great. And then suddenly for no reason, everything goes worse like half a year later. And there's more you can do just by having it be a personal brand and be a studio brand.
Totally. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's all the topics that I wanted to go over. Is there anything that you wanted to chat about?
I don't think so. No, I can keep going about the YouTube and like the fact that like I have one more that I just want to like talk like wallow in misery of like YouTube. It's like the video you made of like, hey, here are my 10K. This is like everything I learned from it. I thought it was probably one of like the best videos you ever make. But it doesn't have that overlap with your audience of like the game devs, and it just doesn't perform well. And that's like the big problem. Like sometimes you make content because you want to make it, and sometimes you have to like you can be like, oh, I only make content I want to make, but sometimes you do want to see that 1 out of 10, like with the little fireworks. And I'll make it top 10 tips to start game dev. At the end of the day, it's a job, and whether it's making a game or making YouTube videos, I think you have to understand that not every day will be fun, and not every day you'll be doing whatever is like the top thing you want to do. Sometimes you just have to suck it up and work on that for a week, and it'll get better eventually. But not every day will be sunshine and rainbows when doing game dev.
100%. Yeah. And that video that you mentioned where it was like a celebration of me getting past the 10,000 subscriber mark. And that video really was more for me, I think, because I knew that it wouldn't perform very well. I knew that people weren't going to want to click on it or watch it, but I just like, I put so much effort into it because I wanted to treat it like a time capsule so that I could go back and watch it, you know. And I'm trying to mix in those videos. You know, you mentioned the go touch grass video, you know, that's another one that has far less views than some of the other ones, and it's just like I'm trying to test, but I'm also trying to mix in the videos that I want to be making as well as ones that I think people want to watch. But I also think there's an element to it of, if I make the videos that I want to make, it's going to sift people through my audience. So if they're less interested in it than they, you know, it like, it's like, yeah, I want to cast a wide net for people that subscribe to my channel, but also it's like, I would rather have people who are like holistically invested in like having a well-rounded life, but also learning game development, but also figuring out how to do that with like finances and time management. You know, like that's kind of like, I basically just want to have people who are like-minded to me following my channel, you know, even if that stunts my growth a bit. I don't know. But I think that there is an element to, if you make the videos that you want to make, then I think your audience will be more engaged too with what you want to be doing.
Yeah, and I think it also like, it's just better business, I think, because you're niching down as well. There's less people competing with you at the end of the day. I'm like currently in the process of making a video where it's like, I watched 100 devlogs. This is what I learned. And it's like all of these devlogs look the exact same. And they're all like all of them are like, oh, faceless guy with quick, snappy editing. And it's like, yeah, these all blur together. Yeah. If you want to go like the business person, you want to start a Patreon, that Patreon is never going to convert as well as if you're like more niche down, more personal and all of that. I think what you're doing is pretty solid there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm enjoying the ride, and it's been really fun to be able to grow and to make games and videos and get them across consoles. And one of the things that I found most valuable about YouTube is just like the networking opportunities, like being able to chat with other developers and people who are doing kind of the same thing that I'm doing, and we can like share struggles and tips and all of that stuff. That's been one of my favorite things about it, as well as like I've actually gotten a surprising amount of job offers just because of my YouTube presence. So I feel like if I ever need to go back to the workforce, I feel like I have a number of different opportunities, which is really cool. But yeah, there's like a lot of intangible benefits to YouTube, I think.
Or like a recent one I did is like, I wanted to make like a video with a publisher. It's like, hey, I have an audience. Can I make a video with you? And it's like, yeah, sure, come on over. And it's like, yeah, if you're no name guy, well, probably you don't have that opener. But we have like, you have something to offer, even if it's like a video or whatever. It's like, it helps in the bigger scale of things always, I think, to have that audience.
Totally. That's awesome. Cool. Well, Marnix, man, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for coming on to do this podcast. I will leave links below for your games and your YouTube channel so that people can check out what you're up to. But is there anything else that you want to plug so that people can follow what you're doing?
I think just check out the YouTube channel. If it's content you like, you'll probably stick around. If it's content you hate, well, I want to know why. I think that's another one. But I think, yeah, I don't have any new book or whatever to plug here. So yeah, cool. Just go and watch the videos. I think they're good.
Yeah, I think they're great too. And I will be eagerly awaiting the Marnix autobiography coming soon. Cool. All right. Well, thanks again.
All right.
Let's do this again.
All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Cool. See ya.